No,
Study
just
up.
these two things.
All right, you're live.
Can we finish that?
You're live. Good afternoon. The May 9th, 2023 Board Special Committee on Housing is now called to order. Before we get started, we need to make certain findings on the record regarding the necessity for conducting this meeting by electronic participation without a physical quorum present due to travel restrictions. In accordance with Tennessee Code annotated section 8-44-108 D2, as chair of the board of the Special Housing Committee on Housing, I offer the following facts and circumstances in support of a finding of necessity for the special committee to conduct May 9th, 2023 meeting without the physical presence of a quorum. The special committee is scheduled to take up important matters that require timely action by the committee, including receiving reports on TSU update to its master plan and housing master plan, reports on enrollment and relating housing issues, and reports from housing committee members. Participation by electronic means is necessitated by travel-related issues involving committee members. Accordingly, I move that the Special Committee on Housing find that participation by a quorum of the Special Committee members by electronic means of communication is necessary. Is there a second?
Trustee McKenzie or Trustee Johnson?
Second.
The question is on the motion to find that participation by a quorum of the members of the special committee by electronic means of communication is necessary. Secretary Pendleton, please call the roll.
Trustee Pinnick?
Aye.
Trustee McKenzie? Trustee McKenzie? Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
The motion carried. We will now proceed with the meeting with the quorum present. Secretary Pendleton,
Let's officially call the roll.
okay, will you officially call the roll, please?
Trustee Pinnick?
Aye, present.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee McKenzie?
Aye.
We have a quorum.
Quorum. Before we
Is it difficult? Is it just?
Yes, actually, I want to just try to acknowledge.
I am. Yeah, I am. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge other board members present. I am present here in the room. On the line, we have Chair Cole. We also have Student Trustee Wimberly. And I'm not sure if there's anybody else on the line. Is there?
Open the thing on the line.
Trustee McKenzie and Trustee Andre Johnson. Well, thank you all for attending. I'd also just acknowledge that also with us is President Glover, members of her staff. We also have two new attorneys with us today. Secretary Pendleton, do you mind?
Yes, I have with me today Jeanette Brown and Sierra Petronzio, both new to the office and are here to assist.
Very well, very well. Thank you both. The next item on the agenda is approval of the Housing Committee minutes. I assume that everyone has had a chance to read those minutes, and is there any discussion? The chair would accept a motion for approval.
Appreciate you. All right, is there a second?
We can probably move in second. The minutes are approved as written in. Oh, okay.
Trustee Pinnick?
Aye.
Trustee McKenzie?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Motion carried. The next several items on the agenda are for discussion. There'll be no action on these items. First, we'll have a report on the master plan by Dr. Curtis Johnson. John.
Good afternoon, thank you. Trustee McKenzie. Trustee Kenneth. Thank you.
Trustee Johnson.
Oh,
No, you just, I don't do acknowledge. I hear you acknowledge. Trustee Johnson.
okay. And Trustee Johnson. And other trustees on the call. Just an overview of where we are with the master plan. The current master plan that the university is operating under was a very solid master plan, and the university is still working toward fulfilling many of the items outlined in that plan. And so in turn, the current plan that the university is working on is a revision of that master plan to bring it in line with the enrollment trends, the outdated facilities, infrastructure needs, also to looking at new programs and the need for additional parking and campus safety. And so in turn, new facilities that we've identified for the new plan is a food science facility, animal science facility, engineering facility, library upgrade and annex, laboratory building, general classroom building, alumni house, College of Education building, and various athletics facilities. The new plan will also look at land and property acquisition, agriculture programs, Avon Williams instructional site update, migration plan, Elliott Hall updates, expanded childcare facility, update space for programs and department, athletic facilities and parking lots, along with the Queen Washington renovation and repurposing. The physical analysis that's being conducted for the campus is in phase one. In phase one will be a building assessment of Elliott Hall, various agriculture buildings, Avon Williams instruction, like Cheatham County facility, the incubation center downtown. And once those assessments have been done and put into the master plan, the university then will submit that plan to TBR for a review and possible revision. And of course, once they finish, then we will submit the plan to THEC for approval.
Any questions, for Dr. Johnson?
May I ask a question, Dr. Johnson, I'm sorry, trustee, may I ask a question?
Yes, Chair Cole.
Does that include the information that trustee McKenzie sent?
Yes.
I hear Avon Williams campus and the other update, but that does include what he proposed to do?
Yes, that one, I mentioned that in the housing update that I've also been requested to do. So,
Oh, okay.
and I mean, you'll hear me say, I didn't get into the specifics of it, but I spoke at a 40,000 foot level in reference the external community relationship and inclusive of P3 partnerships.
All right, Dr. Johnson, I know you are. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? So, Dr. Johnson, let me ask, because you provided some information to us in an email a few days ago. And I know that there are some existing interviews that need to be conducted.
Right.
How is that? What's the progress?
Once they finish, they're in the process of finishing up the building assessment, the building that I listed. So once that assessment is completed, then we'll make appointments with all of the persons that you saw in that list for them to go and sit with those various individuals and or groups across the summer. So they will start that as soon as they submit to us the draft of their building assessment.
Given the importance of the master plan to our strategic plan and our future, what's the time frame?
We're expecting the master planning part to be finished this fall. and once it's finished, once it'll be then, take a period of time to draw up. So we're going to look at possibly 4 to 6 months for them to do all of their compilation of the data and then submitting back to us, drafts. But what we talked about doing is asking for section chapters of the draft as they complete it, so we won't have to wait for the total document.
So my question, also encompasses the housing product.
Yeah.
Right. So if I understand correctly, and I may, and you can correct me if I don't, but if I look at it from a critical path perspective, then we got to get the master plan, housing master plan completed. TBR has to say grace over it. Then we go to SBC and some of the other alphabet agencies.
Let me go first.
So,
There's only one master plan for the entire campus.
Okay.
It includes the campus master plan, the
Okay.
academic master plan, the housing master plan. We have one overall
master plan.
master plan.
All right.
And so now we're talking about just some subsets of where we are with that master plan. That's Johnson gave us some of the buildings, but that's the building master plan, which is overall. But then we got the academic master plan is gonna require some other things. We got, because we got a building, the food science building, other things coming. Then we got the housing master plan is gonna require. So Dr. Johnson's reporting from an overall basis and just telling some of the buildings we're gonna have put in. So then we're saying a timeline. They'll probably put a timeline together in the report. When we do the next report, we can show what's gonna be done when.
So, so given that, and then given the need to put the plan together, get the necessary approvals. In the case of housing, to issue RFPs, and then to construct, and then to occupy. What is the length of time that we're talking? 3 years, 5 years?
Well, what we've been conversing, VP Allen and the committee and consultant, we've been conversing about a master plan amendment to the existing, the 16 master plan. So we are proposing to submit a master plan amendment by the 17th of June, I think it's due. Okay. And so in turn, that will allow us to work with the housing piece without waiting for the overall master plan to be.
So that way we can shorten that time frame.
For the housing piece, yes.
Okay.
That won't stop us from asking them to put on the agenda for the new residence hall.
Right, right, that is super.
Just for background, you might want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned about the building assessment, who's that party or that company and are there other companies involved right now working with the institution and TBR?
With the overall master plan, Wolford is the lead agency with the overall master plan. With the housing component, Moody Nolan is the lead unit with the housing master plan. So in turn, working with both of them, they're working same, together, but to, as the president said, rolling in those other sub master plans into the overall master plan is what ultimately has to happen. But like I said, requesting an amendment to the existing master plan to include the ability to be able to move forward with the 1,000 beds that we're trying to start.
And so once the housing component of it is completed, the amendment piece, then that goes to TBR for approval.
Yes.
And THEC.
And THEC. Okay. All right. And typically,
Okay, and then the 1,000 new beds, that's on campus, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the additional facility that we were looking at, that would be submitted at another time, am I right?
Depending on we met with the builders of those proposed builders for those new facilities, depending on how our relationship is established, that might not deem it necessary to come through any of the university process.
Okay.
Yeah, because the current, Chair Cole, this is Lawrence Pendleton. The current situation we're looking at is more of an affiliation. So they're gonna build it, they're gonna own it. And they're going to actually lease to the students, but that, you know, they sort of be a preferred partner that we can do the referrals and also make sure from a programmatic standpoint, that they're adhering to certain standards, that we want if they want to be affiliated with us. So if all of that exists,
So we'll lease them the land, right?
no, the land is on the House of God property.
Okay, okay, I'm getting confused. This is something different from what trustee McKenzie submitted.
You have,
Both of those were submitted by.
right, okay, so you have multiple projects submitted.
Okay, we talked about the House of God facility, so the House of God would own the land, right?
Yes,
And the third party would negotiate with them, build a facility, and we're just really funneling students to them. Based on them meeting certain requirements we want them to meet.
Right, there's something called an affiliation agreement. Yes. Between us and the county developer. Or in fact, the side of the developer. And then the construction of the 1,500 property on the House of God property. And that's the process that requires an affiliation agreement. Because that affiliation agreement will drive the ability to issue a municipal bond to build the facilities and thus keep the cost of capital where it needs to be. So our students can afford to live in the United States.
So we actually, what are we netting out of that? I'm sorry. I read the one down, the other one, I don't know how I missed this one, but what would we be netting out of that? Just make sure I have a total understanding.
What we net out of it is 1,500.
Okay, for the students.
Yeah.
Okay, but no actual cash fund.
No, downtown is.
Yeah, I understand. I read downtown to see, understand downtown. I got you. Okay. Now I worked with the House of God people for a long time. And they are very cash, well, unless something changed in the last couple of years, they're very cash strong. So they're easy people to deal with though.
And something else that we talked about in the meeting, to discuss the House of God property is, I think they're also looking at doing some renovations, to the current House of God facilities as well, that this third party, would be involved in.
Okay.
All right, so any other questions regarding the master plan?
Yeah, I have a question, this is trustee Johnson. So are we locked in on moving ahead with the 1,000 beds on campus? Is that something that we are doing for sure? Or are we still in discussions to find out which is the best path forward or the public-private partnership or this affiliation agreement? Is it a combination of all of these things? But I guess my concern is I don't want to delay the moving forward with on-campus housing if we have a mechanism to move forward with that.
right. We are, Curtis Johnson, we are pretty locked in. We've gotten verbal agreements with, and TBR is guiding us through this process to try to get all of the documents in order for the 1,000 bed. I think VP Allen is in financial conversations with them, ensuring that we have the financial structure to support it. And the 1,000 bed ultimately will be replacing some existing beds that we plan to demolish some older facilities. So it will wash out.
I think the target is still for them to go in front of the SBC perhaps in July for the 1,000 bed residence hall to get that process kicked off. That's correct, Dr. Johnson?
Right, yes.
But we're not
So,
sure we're not,
The issue
Trustee
with the
Johnson,
on-campus housing is
we're not
ultimately
sure.
that would cause either, it would basically be no net gain for rooms. So that's why it's important to not only do that, but to do the off-campus stuff,
It's-
or the partnership stuff to increase the total number.
That's correct.
What's the rate? Where's the
Alright.
net gain?
But
There's a net gain of 1,000.
ultimately, we're gonna tear down the whole building.
Yeah, but right now, it is a net gain right now. Until we tear it down, because we're not gonna tear it down until we get to the point where we can. We're asking questions. You know.
Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be Dr. Glover speaking to the fact that there's not gonna be an automatic switch out. That we're gonna
If you
add,
tear it down, you have $1,000 net gain in beds until you tear it down.
Right.
Yeah, then we're gonna build it back, so it'll be temporarily, it'll be a temporary loss of money, but it will be overall a net gain of a 1,000 beds, not rooms. That's what I was saying.
So, and again, I apologize, I had to step out for a second. So the plan is, once we build once we get approval for the new residence halls for the 1,000 beds, that will come on, that'll be a net gain of 1,000. We will then look at what residence hall needs to come offline at that point, okay? So the plan is to never be with a net loss in beds if possible.
Because what they're saying at the legislature is precisely what you said, Trustee Johnson. I think that's a misunderstanding, is that we're not gonna have any new beds because we're gonna tear down the others. So we would have a net gain of beds initially, and then we would tear down, say we remove Wilson. That'll be 500 beds gone for a temporary position. And then we build those back up. We'll continue. We're not gonna just take it down at the same time. That's the issue. So it's gonna eventually edge out, win out. And that's what we're showing in the housing plan.
Yeah, I just think we need to word that a little differently in the plan, because I understand exactly what you're saying, and I understand that we would not ever be at a net loss, because you wouldn't go in and tear down 1,000 beds at the same time, never 1,000.
And that's what TBR was
I
working
think
with
it
us
needs to
on.
be just stressed a little differently in the plan.
TBR came and said with the facing, and you just did a chart as to when one would go offline, what would happen with the stair step. And he's working on it, but that's been a couple of months ago. I'm not sure where it is right now. We went through that with us as to when the next one would start. When one would start, when the next one would start. And so that stair step is what that's John just has it. Okay, so it shows exactly when one is coming off, when another's coming in. So it won't be like it's a net loss of beds.
But I think that it's important in the housing plan as well to put what the expected needs are, like maybe for the next 5 years, maybe for the next 10 years, whatever, so that we can know what we're shooting for in terms of total rent.
We do have that, we have that plan. We have a 5-year residential plan, talking about the, that would align with the, recruitment enrollment plan. And so in turn, we have a document that outlines, that's proposing when we would go into design, like 2023, we'd go into design of the first 500 bed residential facility. In 24, 25, we'll start the construction of that facility.
Okay. So Dr. Johnson, is this just a kind of a summary that you gave us,
Yes, ma'am.
right,
Yes, ma'am.
sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's just kind of a summary. That's not how everything feeds in.
Oh, no.
Yes, and at some point in time, I think, not me, because I'm not, well, I am me too, but I think the board has to have understanding of how it feeds in.
Okay.
I may be in error on that, but I do think the summary is great, I understand that, but I think the board needs to have the total picture.
Sure, no problem. And talking about continuing on with the housing, of course, we all know the housing challenges we've experienced. And so in turn, the housing plan is nearing completion. We're about 6 weeks from the completion of the housing master plan. We have some data that we have, we're going to submit hopefully this week. And then the clock will be ticking as to getting it back from the team and submit it to TBR. So hopefully we'll have that document completed within the next 6 weeks and back for approval.
But will the board get an opportunity to look at it before it goes to the housing committee? Or is the board looking at the pieces individually as going to them?
Well, I've shared some information about it with.
Well, this is all I have.
No.
Okay, all I'm saying, if you look at what we were criticized about basically not knowing what's going on, okay? Not that I necessarily think they're gonna change it, but I do think the committee needs to know the total picture of what's going into the, excuse me, I'm always saying regulators, but what's going into the commission or whoever it is before it goes.
Yeah, I can share with you the current draft that I have. It doesn't have the final pieces that we're working on now. But I can share with the president, and she can share it with the board, the draft.
Well, I may be speaking out of order, Dr. Johnson. I would have to leave. Dr. Pennard may not want to see that in his committee, but I just think overall the board needs to be aware.
Well, thank you for elevating the chair. So my question, yes, so we do need to see that. My question is, what numbers are we working on? When you talk about 5 years horizon, how many beds are we talking about? Because in my mind, we should be talking about 10,000 beds to include those we replace and new ones coming online to give enrollment management some opportunity to students.
Well, using the TBR formula, and that's what they always use on us, the TBR formula. They talked about, in fact, we even went back and reviewed the formula and plugged in the current data from this fall of 22 into the formula. And I think we're up to about 9,000 beds. I think it's a little over 9,000 beds that we're looking at.
Okay.
Total. What they're also doing is looking at the enrollment and retention and classification of students. And we talked about the student market that we have not tapped into effectively, non-traditional student, veterans, and families. And so in turn, factoring them into the equation, that's how we got to the number, but they're looking at the types of rooms that we should have, single room, double room, suites, et cetera, apartments versus, so they're looking at our retention history and factoring that into the equation.
I
Well,
have a question, Dr. Johnson. In the next report, the time is going to be done within the next 6 weeks or so. Is the number of beds that has been proposed to the housing committee in conjunction with the public-private partnerships included in those numbers?
Not the original number. Not the original. No, they're not.
Okay, are you aware of the number of beds that are being proposed in the two initiatives that have been proposed to the house committee? By number, there's 2,000 beds in that, 2,100 beds in that proposal.
I hadn't told it at this point, but I know there were quite a few compared in
1,500 beds in the House of God proposal, and 600 beds in the Irvine Williams Campus proposal. It's important for all to know the numbers that we're working.
and let me interject. I believe that VP Allen is going to have a conversation with MDHA, who also has some land that's undeveloped that provides some opportunity for us too. So were you able to do that?
Yes, it was, and they're gonna send us some additional information back on that as well. And one thing I want to note too, we're thinking about space and what we bring online versus what we take offline. We have space right now on campus for 1,000 beds. I think, does that maximize us at that point, Dr. Johnson, or do we have others?
we have other space.
So that ties into the kind of how it's structured from the standpoint where we never lose beds per se. Okay, so at one point, based on just the timeline, we'll probably have two residence housing construction. Okay, at the same time, they may overlap, but literally bringing one on, having one shortly, and then we take off one offline and go down that path. So we really never have a negative bed.
And based on the conversation we've been having with House of God and others, if we're able to maintain this timeline that we're proposing, all of those spaces will come online almost by the same time, within a short period of each other. That would really be a big boom for us, and it would allow the university to move infrastructure wide rapidly.
Any other questions? Trustees? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move to the next item on the agenda, an update on TSU's housing plan. I think that's. Dave Stevens?
So this is more short term, what we're doing over the next semester or so. Chair Penny, the last meeting we had, we were meeting right before the spring semester was to kick off, and we had a lot of questions about what that would look like in terms of housing compared to what we were dealing with in the fall. So as we go back and look in our rearview mirror of a very, very successful housing plan that we executed in the spring semester, we were able to house all of our students, and we were able to reduce 3 hotels in the spring and still accommodate all of our students in housing. So very smooth transition from the spring, and that's what we're working hard for the fall as well. And so we do have some fall data now in terms of how many students have applied, how many we are expecting, and some stock gaps for each time we think that number shifts, we have a plan in that space. So we opened up our housing applications earlier this year, and the students responded tremendously. So as of right now, we have 3,881 returning students who have already applied for housing. We'll start assignments in June and July. And then our first-time freshmen are rolling in here as well. 725 first-time freshmen. We're managing that data with enrollment management. And so we got some targets there to make sure that we don't go over in that space. So if we were only deal with the spaces that we have on campus and the spaces that we kind of call our supply close to the campus spaces, such as Jefferson Flats and House of God, of which we have multi-year contracts with, and now the Kappa House. So with those spaces, it gives us 3,924 beds to work with from fall. Now we're asking for, and we're submitting a request for 2 hotels, which would increase that by up to 4,361 beds for the fall semester. And we think, so we've got a plan for both of those numbers. We certainly hope we can get to the 4,361 and it's approved by SBC, but we're planning as if though we won't have those hotels. And we put our plan in place as if though we won't have them. But if we do that, then we'll obviously be able to accommodate more students, take in more first-time freshmen and provide housing for them. So I feel confident that the fall semester will look a lot like our spring semester. You know, it's going to still be very busy, and we're still going to have some students who haven't applied and we need to clear balances, those kind of things before they apply. We'll have a full picture. But I tell you, to have 3,881 students who've already applied for housing for the fall is a big step, and I think opening it up sooner gave us the opportunity to capture those students and to plan. So that's where we are now. And
I want to add to that. That is a gross number. there will be some of those students who obviously will have reasons, they won't come for various reasons. So we plan on a percentage that won't be here, and that will allow more beings for students who will need them.
Okay, so, if we're planning worst case scenario, returning students plus first time students so far, it's 4,600 students. 4,600 beds for housing. Currently, we have available 4,361, including hotels. So we're already upside down.
But an application for housing doesn't mean that you will be awarded housing, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Well, these are returning students. I'll let somebody else answer that question.
Okay, so where'd you said 4,600?
So returning students, the number that I heard was 3,881. First time.
No, I'm
students,
sorry, I apologize. I gave you, the returning students is 3,139.
Okay.
The total is 3,881. I apologize. I see how that really would have raised some red flag.
Okay. All right. So, so we're at 3,881 total, 725 first year students or first time students.
Yes.
But that number is still growing, I assume.
It will grow some more after we have the orientations. And so we're managing it on a daily basis. The percentage of ones who are likely not to show up of the number. So we're running a very tight margin, because we know that we can work with 3924 and maybe a handful of others from the community of those who are working with us. And if we get the hotels, that will add 437 more. But that's where we are, and we're managing both of those numbers. We'll know for sure, but right now, that's where we are.
We have a date on the docket for SBC.
For
Hotel
hotels.
request.
Yes, so we've met with the executive subcommittee, and that's chaired by Ann McGar, the state architect. We actually met just yesterday. We met prior to that. We are on the docket for 5/16 of this month.
And staff is going to be a positive recommendation for us.
I'll tell you what, I'll say this, they were very pleased with the fact that we started the process much sooner. I know Dr. Glover has had several conversations with folks at TBR saying, here's where we are throughout the process. So we've been able to follow up and deliver, getting all our materials in. They had very few questions from us. So again, we are on the agenda for 5/16.
And so THEC is going to support us in that.
Yes, we do have support. Well,
Overtly.
yes, we have support, given the fact that we had early submission and getting all of our documents in. Now, I can't say that I can't speak for them, okay? But what I will say is I think we're looking good to move forward.
What is our plan B if they say no?
I think Dean Stevenson had mentioned that we will not exceed, of course, the number of beds.
Until we've gotten an answer from them. We're on there pretty early in May, so have enough time to let students know right now. We've changed the form to show that you're not guaranteed housing, et cetera, et cetera. So, but we're still gonna, if we get the 400 more beds that we'll need, then we can really work with 400 more students.
Thank you.
You know, I don't think it's their aim to thwart the growth of TSU. I think they want to just manage it better.
Hey, I had one question related to the freshman number. That freshman housing requirement seems like it's a lot lower than the demand was this year. Why is that? You said the freshman number would only be roughly 735 or something like that. Didn't this year the freshman housing number, wasn't it much higher than that?
Yeah, we scared them away. There are a lot of reasons. One of which is we have not started orientations yet. And we usually get a surge once we have our first orientation, which is what day, May
19th.
May 19th. So at that time, at that first meeting, several students at that point go online, the first year student, and apply for housing. But after that,
That's after our SBC day.
maybe after SBC.
So we'll know that answer.
That's the point, we'll know what we can do at that point. But some have heard and read in the paper, heard the news report, they listened to the hearings. And they're asking, we asked Lawrence a question one day about whether we're gonna still have housing at all for students. And some are asking, can we still come to Tennessee State, or you all gonna let us come this year? So they hear things, they form their own opinions, and so we're trying to undo some of the damage that was done inadvertently or deliberate, I don't know. We're trying to undo some of that damage. So once they get understandings of that we do have housing, it's just that we have limited housing, but we do have some housing. We're no different from anybody else, the other HBCU and non-HBCUs. So it will change after we get start having orientations.
I'm sorry I came late, but did you talk about Memphis asking for housing? Are they asking for housing this year? For hotels?
I don't know.
My understanding is
We're-
UT.
Memphis, just correct, Memphis never asked for hotels, they asked for kind of a similar site to House of God, so an off-campus facility. But that was UT that had. asked for
My understanding, UT is not asking for hotels this year, that they solved the problem, they bought a hotel or something.
Well, can I ask, I need a little help on these numbers. We said we had 3,139 students return. 725 due, there's 3,864, 3,924 available right now, not including hotel. So basically, if you look at that point, we had a 60-bed deficit. Then we got 377, I guess, that we would have to do something else with when they come in. But I do go back to Dr. Attorney Johnson. We had 3,000 plus students last year, first time coming in a new student. Of course, I know we won't have that this year. But my question is 725 realistic enough for us to draw a conclusion on at this point? I guess what I'm saying is I don't see if the 725 is not a realistic number, we really don't have a good handle on it right at this moment. I don't know if it's a whole lot beneficial to us. Spend a lot of time continuing to discuss this because we don't really know exactly what our margins are.
Let's say, we had 3,881 returning students. Of those, 15 to 20%, use the 15% number, won't come back. That's about 300. Give it 300, you take off that. So that leaves 300 more beds available, plus we have the remaining, the 400, plus the remaining, so that gives us like 700 more beds. So we suspect that of the number of students that will live on campus, we'll be able to accommodate them.
So if the question,
Is there a mechanism to prioritize housing? In other words, if just because you apply, let's just say we have 4,000 applications, how do we determine who gets what? Is there some type of publicly available formula on how we determine who gets housing?
yeah, so Trustee Johnson, you're kind of right on the street we need to be on. So the numbers that I just gave you, those are all students who have applied. So they're priority right now. Anybody beyond this, anybody who comes kind of after this time, we control that. We say yes or no, right? So as a matter of fact, returning students application is not open right now. We're just open now for just first time freshmen. So we'll open that window up again, that spaces become available. So we're managing it. Do we think it's gonna be more students, if we don't get the hotel, will it be more students who will want housing that we cannot meet their demand? Yes, but there will be mostly first-time freshmen who we will, so basically, we'll lose out on some freshmen who may not come here if we can't provide them housing. But we won't disenfranchise returning students from continuing their education, because that's we're managing it. Does that make,
Yeah, that's where I think, Andre, I think that's where you're going, right? Is if we're trying to maintain persistence, because you get paid when they cross the stage, right? in addition to getting tuition, so we gotta work on that end too. So if we're,
So I guess,
But I think the 725 number is way off.
yeah, I think that's low. That's my point.
I think that's way off, and that doesn't give us a good picture where we are. Because if you use that number you just gave us, 3081, you say you're only gonna get about 85% return, that's 3,299. Then you got 3,924 beds, so right there you got a surplus. And then you say you looked at 2 hotels. I understand all that part on the end, I just don't think 725 is a good number. And I know you have to
well,
think, but I don't
the-
think
it's just where we are now.
The 729s, all that is where we are right now. You take a picture right now, we do expect that number to be different. But if that's just a snapshot of today, but we expect that number to be different.
Different to grow.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
it's gonna create a bigger deficit because even though we've taken a snapshot of where we are right now in terms of students, our snapshot of beds stays the same. That's a constant, right? With assuming we don't get the hotel, assuming we do get the hotel, it's a constant number. So my concern is, I think we need to develop some type of mechanism to decide how we're gonna assign these beds, because to me, the freshmen need to be a priority as well as the returning students. And I don't know how other schools do it, but there's some point, I'm sure, where we need to start putting people on a waiting list, or we need to start sending them a letter saying, you're this number on the waiting list, so that they know they can start looking early for alternative housing.
and certain scholarship students, Attorney Johnson, are priority beds. Certain scholarship students are guaranteed beds.
Understood?
Not all of them, but certain of them.
So what is the practice to tell first-time students that housing is not guaranteed, or to tell upperclassmen that housing is not guaranteed? And what is our best course of action? Turn away new customers or to manage existing customers?
well, because you're right, because the persistence people negatively impact our performance funding and all our other metrics too. Okay, so we need to, I hate to say this, but the priority needs to be persistence first, new next. Just economic.
Trustee, can I ask?
Sure. Go.
I kind of want to get a reminder of what the discussion on the table again. So I believe, go ahead.
So the discussion is right now prioritizing beds. That's the immediate sort of context that we're talking about. Because we look like we may have more students than we think, or more demand for housing than what the numbers are revealing right now. So the question is, how do we prioritize that?
I think it's important too, and I don't want to jump the agenda, but there was some real concern about the enrollment numbers that were talked about at the board meeting. And I know myself and other people raised concern about those numbers, and there was some discussion about, hey, well, we know we're admitting this number of students, but we don't anticipate them living on campus. Some are going to be transient, so forth. And I think it's all related. So would it be appropriate to go ahead and talk a little bit about that? So then we can kind of tie this all together of kind of what we should be expecting.
Sure. It's all together. That's fine. If Mr. Isbell wants to go ahead.
Sure, and I think Vice President Stevenson did a good job of laying the groundwork. The key here is managing the numbers daily. So currently, we have admitted 11,467 students. And of that number, 2,092 have committed to Tennessee State University for the fall. That means that the student has raised their hands, contacted us, and completed their intent to enroll form and started the enrollment process. The enrollment process is a 4-stage process. They reserve their housing if they're going to stay on campus. They'll do their financial
Repeat the
aid.
number, please. I'm sorry, the ones that have committed.
There are a total of 2,092 who have committed. New. These are all new students, yes. And those 2,092 are pushed through the enrollment process with our enrollment services team. They're encouraged to do their housing, make their housing application, meaning put a deposit there if they're going to stay on campus. If they're planning to go online, then we connect them with academic affairs to do an academic affairs assessment to get the program of study that they're going to be in, set their classes up that way. They're also encouraged to register for new student orientation, do their financial aid, complete their housing, and complete their intent to enroll. So that's where we are at the moment. Frank mentioned the 725, I think, what was the number, 736? 725, who have completed the housing. And so one of the things that I'd like to just point out, knowing that we have this housing circumstance, we're moving in step with housing, monitoring the available beds. We could, move that number to X, Y, or Z, 2,000 students on campus, right away. But we know based on our current experience and our current inventory, we've got to move in lockstep and make sure we're all moving together based on the priority, So last year, this time, and I heard someone mention this, that number is a lot lower than it was. Well, because we were doing a lot of pushing and a lot of marketing and a lot of engagement with those students. Not to mention that our scholarship drive started a lot sooner. That started in September, whereas this year it started in March. See what I'm saying? So the momentum is a lot different. Not to worry, because we do have the admitted student pool there to really make whatever our fall number projection needs to be happen. But again, we're moving very steadily, observing the number of beds, waiting on the decisions that are happening in play, and then we'll run with full court when we get that final number. Ideally, we would like to have about 2,000 first-time freshmen for the fall. And of that number, our projection within that, 1,000 of them would be residential. Another 300 would be commuters, first-time freshmen. Another 150 would be complete students who only want to do online programs. And then we have our adult learner base. We have a wonderful partnership with Amazon Choice. And that program, we project getting about 550 students. 300 of those adult learners will be on ground, and then 250 would be adult freshmen who are online. So that total number would be the 2,000 first-time freshmen.
Our yield last year was what? 31, 32%?
It was a little higher. It was 42%.
42%.
Yeah.
All right, so 42%.
The intent to enroll.
Of 11,000 of the admitted was
Right, 42%.
is an untenable number.
Right.
All right,
Right.
it's an untenable number. So what is the likelihood that we're going to see that same yield, or even a yield?
Well, we're not, great point. Because what we do in this process, we look at yield rates and really kind of gauge our projection. There are two dynamics that are different, and I'm glad you raised that. One dynamic is just the fact that the HBCU coming off the COVID pandemic, students getting back into school was a real big priority, and several things that were going on in the industry in general. So I think that's kind of leveled out. It hasn't gone away completely. There's still high interest, as you see the number of students who've applied to TSU. But that coupled with the marketing efforts and the enrollment efforts that our teams did last year out of the gate in September to make this class really created a higher yield rate. So I think given this year, we will simmer back to that 30. We anticipate our general 30 to 33% yield rate.
Which is
But are are you saying that you're limiting acceptances based on the available housing?
We deliberately slowed it down.
No, we didn't say that we're limiting. We're saying students are, right now, the application portal is open for students, first-time freshmen to apply for housing. There's no limit on that. That 725, these are students who have organically gone, got their ID, gone to do the application. Now, what I'm saying
That's
is,
not what I'm saying. No, what I'm saying is, when you talk about admitted students and students that you are admitting through the process now, let's just say today, 5,000 qualified students apply to TSU. Would they be admitted?
5,000 students qualified to be.
Qualified students.
At this point, we are taking it day by day, managing the number of students that we admit and the number of students that we push to housing.
Well, there's two, there's,
See,
yeah,
That's where I.
that's two questions. Right, go ahead.
The housing issue is a separate issue.
Yes.
Okay,
Admitting students and housing students are two separate issues. Are you saying that we don't have the ability to, let's just, again, I'm going to throw out a number. Let's just say 2,000 qualified students apply today. Are you saying that we don't have the resources as a university to not just house those students, but to teach those students and give them an effective college experience?
well, I think no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we let those students know what the limitations are in terms of what's available for housing. And we also let them know if housing is an option for you, that you want to stay on campus, you need to get this housing application done by X date. Or you may want to consider being a commuter or an online student.
But
But I think the question he has is, what's the goal for the total amount of students that we would ask? I mean, not on campus, that we would educate.
I'm not clear on what you're asking.
total enrollment.
So you said 11,467 students had applied.
Mhm.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, what's the maximum number of students, full-time equivalent, that we are willing to educate this spring? What's the total enrollment we will take? Don't consider the housing. We just talk about total enrollment.
Yeah, you're talking seats, classroom space, instructional capacity. And that's the unknown right now, because that hasn't been calculated.
Has the number been set in terms of
Projected.
Yeah, a projected capacity.
Yeah.
Projected
90.
capacity. Okay, so what is that number?
9,200.
So 9,200 is you are saying is going to be the cap that you're going to work with. And then you're going to work from there and manage it. And going back to Trustee Johnson's comment, separating out the acceptance and the application for the institution versus what are we offering and what can we provide for the housing? And our communication plan to both returning students and new students that will be in alignment with that overall 9,200 number.
And if I may, if you recall, back in the fall, when we were presented to the SBC and others, the same question that Trustee Andre Johnson is asking is very similar to what they were stating in that committee, in one of the committee meetings, or several of them. So we said that there would be a cap on housing, but not necessarily a cap on enrollment. Enrollment differs greatly than housing. Even though we had an influx of students for this past or this current year that we're in, we were able to get additional academic space. We were able to bring on the online classes. We brought in agile faculty. So we met those academic needs. But what we're looking at now is, at the end of the day, enrollment is not necessarily being managed because of housing. It's that students need to get their applications and things in to manage the housing process. So two very different things. And Trustee Johnson, if I'm speaking, please let me know.
Let me,
So I think that's right. I guess my point is, we need to be focused on housing because obviously it's a very big issue and it's an issue that we're being dinged on. But we're here to educate students, right? And again, I went to Howard University, it's in an urban area, housing's limited. They told me when I got there, you may not have housing. We prioritize freshman housing, but after that, you're on your own. And so what I don't want us to do is to get so caught up on the housing issue, we miss the opportunity to educate students. And on the flip side of that, have income for the university, right? And so I just want to make sure that we're managing those two processes independently, but collectively, if that makes sense.
And I think Dean Stevenson had touched on the numbers with respect to the returning. And those right now, we've reached that maximum. So what, going back to Trustee Johnson, are we putting people on the waiting list? Are we establishing something to let people who are returning students who have not gotten their housing application that's different?
Yeah, so we haven't started the wait list. Remember, we're having a reset from historical expectations. So we're doing a lot of communications with students in terms of what's the next steps, what are we doing, what we're able to provide, but we have not opened the wait list. And the reason why we haven't done that at this time is because our students had an expectation, if I'm on the wait list, you provide me housing. All of the folk that went to the media were on the wait list. So we're trying to make sure we just communicate very effectively. Now, the wait list said, you're not guaranteed, we don't have any housing. But they didn't show that letter to the media or to anybody else. So we're just trying to reset it. And I mean, I'm very proud of the students. I mean, again, 3,800 students of the 4,200 or what have you that were staying on campus, they've already resubmitted. Then you got some who graduated. So I mean, not 3,100. You got some that have graduated. So they have, for the most part, we feel very good about the returning students. They've done what they needed to do.
Our retention.
Yeah, and now you have some, we expect to have some attrition in that space. But I agree with you, we're certainly not saying, hey, we may not have housing and you can't attend, but we want to be honest and say, if you attend, we have some limitations. It's not, we're not in a space where, we'll be able to accommodate, if all 2,000 of those freshmen needed housing, we would not be able to accommodate them this coming year. Our plans that we're putting in place is going to get us there. But we've got to be very intentional over the next few years in terms of just how we manage. And so
I think you're going to changing the mindset from where we were to the mindset that Trustee Johnson had when he went to Howard.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And
that happens with a lot of communication.
Yeah.
So we're over communicating. We're trying to be very intentional. We started this very early. We started this housing process very, very early, and the numbers are what we expected them to be. So we're not surprised by any of these numbers. We got a large freshman class, and the attrition rate looks good right now. So they're all anticipating coming back. We're excited about that. But we have to plan for that large freshman class for the next until 2026, right? We got to move with them, and we have to plan accordingly. Now, if you look at our housing numbers prior to this year, when we had over 3,000 plus freshmen, those numbers, we were only housing about 1,200 to 1,300 first-time freshmen. So if we get to housing 1,000 or 1,100, we're only still a couple hundred from what would normally be our normal trend. Last year was not normal for us. It was very abnormal. And again, it's probably something that we may not see every year. So.
I'm sure that you guys look at this every day as a team, every week, and report on it. But if there's some type of way that you can put a mechanism in place to update the board, I don't know, I don't want to be cumbersome, but monthly, bi-monthly, so that we know what's going on over the summer in terms of, what the numbers look like, what the housing looks like. I don't want to get dinged again for them saying, we don't know. We weren't on top of it. We was last minute. I think that we also need to know those numbers, and we need to be talking about what's happening from both aspects of this coin.
If I can add to that, just with Oprah being here alone on this past Saturday, we've had an uptick in calls, students are interested, et cetera. So everything that goes on here, it triggers students wanting to be here. Okay. Now, these meetings that we're having here, such as this housing committee, this is very different than what we did last year, right? If you think about it, we are taking a proactive approach. We're not, our numbers are in line with where we are as of today, as Dean Stevenson and AVP Izzard has said, okay? So we expect additional students to come in, right? But we can only house to that number. And please note, Dr. Glover had mentioned again in the committee meetings downtown that we're going to provide a report to show how many number of students we had to turn away because of the lack of housing. So there's really a two-pronged approach to what we're trying to do here. I think it's very different. You all asked some great questions. We'll be able to provide feedback. But at the end of the day, we're managing to the numbers, at least for the beds that we have.
And to answer your question, Trustee Johnson, yes, we can we'll make sure that between the team, between Dean Stevenson and AVP Izzard, Dr. Glover, VP Allen, that we'll get those numbers and send that out to the board on a monthly basis.
Or a dashboard or something.
Thank you.
So one of the things that is still concerning me is that if I'm a junior and I live in housing and I've invested significant amount of money in tuition, the thing that's going to make me not complete is that I don't have housing. And my understanding is you haven't collected that information from them to say, do you want housing? Yes or no? Seems like it's backwards. The persistence people should be asked, do you want this room next year or not? Make your decision now, early on. If you say no, we're releasing your room and don't expect any housing. That way we know who's returning, what the persistence numbers are, and then we know what the available space is. I hate for us to get in the business of convincing these people to come in and persist and invest significant amounts of money and then not be able to support them to finish.
So Trustee Johnson, I think to your point, that's how we reversed the model this year.
Yeah.
So you're making a really great point. Our calls came from returning students.
Yeah.
So we reversed the model to give them opportunity to say, hey, I want space. We opened that up earlier. And we've gotten probably, I would say 90% of those returning already in the pit. So I don't think that's where the issue is going to be. The issue is going to be in terms of how many first-time freshmen we will be able to provide housing for. Is that number going to be 1,000 or is it going to be 1,300? And that's going to be based on, if we get the hotels, if we don't get the hotels, we'll just be limited. So you're making an excellent point in terms of what we heard and how we manage this.
Yeah, my daughter goes to Martin, and if she wanted her dorm room, we had to make that decision early on in the spring semester. Okay. And we made the decision yes or no. And if the answer was no, that room became available for an incoming student. Okay. I'm just not, I may not be hearing it right. Okay. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's exactly what's happened. The students who wanted to return have already made their selections. That's why we got that 3,100.
All right, so let me give you a number. 3139, I guess is that number of the returning students. We have 11,467 students that have applied. I'm going to use Mr. Izzard's lower number, yield number of 30%. It's 3,440 students. I think last year, those students that opted for housing averaged somewhere around 46%. If I take 46% of the 3,440, I have 1,582 students, freshman students, that need housing or that would ordinarily opt for housing based on the lower yield and the average.
That's what we suspect.
That's about where we.
That's what we suspect.
1,582 plus 3,139 is 47, 4,800, 47. All right. So that's what I've got.
And what's different about this year is that we have the opportunity to manage that process to get to that 1,500 or not.
Okay, so managing it means that we have some kind of communications plan that we could
Oh,
provide
yeah.
to the board. So we could see what you're saying, when you're gonna say it, who you're gonna say it to, and
Absolutely.
who's gonna say it.
Absolutely. Yes.
And the 3,100, don't forget, 3,100 is a number as of right now. There'll be, you're gonna take away about 300 of those students who will not come. So
Wow.
that frees up beds. That's how we manage it. We know that 300, 325 will not come. Will return. They just have different reasons. They don't come back the second year. That's why retention rate is not what it should be. But those are beds that are available. And then we're hoping that we get the hotel beds. So we're planning it and managing it on a daily basis. We're looking at it. We're not just sitting there waiting on you all to give us some thoughts. We've been thinking through this and working on it day and night for the last 5 to 6 weeks. And so we're working through it. It's where we thought it would be. You know, because we know we have to wait until the after the first session, then they start. That's when they really start, when they come to campus. You know.
Well, I know we use the word, what we think and what we hope, which doesn't give me any comfort.
Well,
None at all.
and I'll tell you two other solid things President Glover mentioned about them coming to campus. So we have what's called admitted student days for the students that are in that program, and then also the new student orientation. So those are deciding factors for students as well, along with the communication plan. All of these details we can provide for you.
Any other questions on either the enrollment or housing discussion?
Yes, I just want clarification. So we are taking priority on the returning student, correct?
The question was, are we placing priority on the returning students?
We already did. They on that number.
So the answer to the question, trustee Roman is yes.
Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda, any discussion or report from our activities with SBC, TSSBA? I know we've talked about it some.
So what I mentioned earlier is pretty much where we are in a nutshell as it relates to the ESC. That's the executive subcommittee of the SBC. As I mentioned, we're currently on the agenda for the approval of the 2 hotels, and we're moving forward. I've got to get some information to TBR as it relates to the new residence hall. But we're looking to be on the agenda for that in July. That's the plan right now.
All right, thank you, sir. Next, any reports, comments or questions from trustee McKenzie and trustee Andre Johnson?
I'll make it very brief. My assignment was going for additional bids through public-private partnership. I've been able to get 2 proposals for that, 2 distinct proposals by 2 private developers. One, Otis Johnson and Fellows who has been a part of a collaboration with Turner Construction, with the district, and with Enrollment, and obviously with the House of God, we have the contract. So we sent the land to build 600 buildings. We understand that with the process involved, it's going to go to the region, for the building commission to approve that, or if we're still in the whether or not that has to go to that. There will have to be an affiliation agreement and the side of the developer for the America. I've been in conversations with the Allen with regards to what the cost of the business has to be in line with what I was doing for back into the dimension with the amount that I see that is given past the past number. That's one initiative. The second initiative is a proposed 99-year lease on the overall property downtown. This will give us a cash flow each year of $4 million a year, which again, in discussion with Doug Allen, it yields 240 scholarships on a new scholarship basis. If you try to use the $4 million to revenue for scholarship additions to that, one of the proposals yields a $10 million additional contribution to class. It's plus $1 million a year at some point. And in the middle of the developer, we are again getting conversation as recent as yesterday with Tunnel Construction, who also is interested enough provide scholarships as we see some $60,000 a year scholarships to students. Plus, summer jobs, plus TSU initiatives, plus not to mention politics, they are well connected for the reasons to help us get approval in the event they are construction companies, and they are a global construction company, as you all know, largest construction companies in Nashville for the kind of conflict that they just wanted to. So as a part of my assignment, I'm committed to two initiatives that represent thousands of bills that have been approved. I'm hoping to move it along through the approval process to the authority. Soon we will develop a master plan as soon as possible. We'll say that private business people and public business people move at a different pace. As a result, keep these people on the table with what I think personally are very fruitful opportunities for TSU and the population. I would encourage us to move. I would like to do if there was doing all these things, that we can move along to the top of the camp. But we're not driving that in any way. We will follow the deliveries and opportunities that the population. And that is my report.
Thank you, sir.
So is the Avon Williams piece that you're talking about, is that the incubation center? Is that? Is it mine?
It's one is looking at the incubation center and the other is looking at that far lot on closest to where that transformer and power station used to be.
Didn't Amazon offer us something on the incubation center a long time ago? $20 million up front, and then they would build it, and we live in the bottom part, they live in the top part.
It wasn't Amazon, the developer of the Nashville Yards.
Right.
So they talked about purchasing the property first.
Right.
And then with respect to a potential financing, that was something that they never worked through.
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone to take a look at the numbers and then we'll be offered in the proposal. It's about $1 billion offer.
And if I heard you right, it's a $4 million yield scholarships from that lease.
So the $4 million is for the lease. $4 million is for the lease. That's a 99-year lease.
Right.
And then there's an additional $2 million there, which comes somewhere around year 6 or 7. And then there's $1 million a year of scholarships in addition to that. That come somewhere after the.
Yeah.
The substantial cash flow there is dependent value of money. Yeah. We're looking at a dead asset that's returning nothing. And so we need to monetize the asset.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so that we have to take it.
Thank you, trustee McKenzie. Trustee Andre Johnson.
Just an update. I still continue to talk to several property owners, near the university as well. I haven't gone as far as, trustee McKenzie in terms of bringing anybody in yet. Some of these property owners are very fickle and they've owned the property for a long time. But I'm trying to convince them that, they have a great location and we need to do some type of partnership or some type of, arrangement with Tennessee State to help with the housing, which could be beneficial for both parties. So I want to come and talk to VP Allen, Dr. Johnson about some of those sites, and then kind of talk about, would they work, would they not work, and then bring them to the housing committee once we have an opportunity to kind of vet them to see what they look like and are they suitable for our needs. Other than that, I've been talking to some property owners that have multiple Airbnb units and other smaller units, might be anywhere from house anywhere from 8 to 20 students, and talking to them about potentially doing some leases with Tennessee State, and so continue to work on those things on my side.
Thank you, sir.
Am I correct in assuming that, so at the Oprah graduation, I was sitting with, I think you were with me, E.B. Ewing and his son?
Yeah.
Right? And I assumed that they were there to talk about these kind of things. Did someone have a chance to talk with them about that?
I'm not familiar.
For the guys that bought the North River, they're building
They
it.
were the guest of the president, and so, yeah, there been some conversation.
All right, finally, on the agenda is report on some of our position searches. Is that-
So as of now, and that kind of went back to what the board had charged the president to do. We've since hired an assistant vice president for customer relations, assistant vice president for compliance and risk management, an assistant VP for enrollment management, an assistant VP for housing and residential life. The chief operating officer, I think Attorney Pendleton can speak more to that, but we've had interviews in that area. And then we also hired the assistant vice president, of facilities design and construction. So we've made great strides to get the right people in place. These people, the roles that they'll serve will help benefit the university. For example, the assistant vice president that we hired, Will Radford. He is a TSU alum. He has a degree in structural engineering from TSU. Very bright gentleman. He's worked very closely with P3 agreements, etc. His position, along with a few others that we wanted to fill there, will help us then be able to move away from TBR as it relates to managing our own construction projects. So there is a checklist. We're going through that checklist now. Dr. Johnson is very familiar with it. He and I work very closely as it relates to facility needs on this campus. So I'm glad to report that we've been able to hire these individuals based on the request of the board and also some of the recommendations in the comptroller.
Can you give us their names?
I don't,
Customer relations, anybody know?
yeah. So that is Jessica Powell. The assistant vice president of compliance and risk is Cynthia Howell. I don't, Lawrence, you may have one for the enrollment management. I don't have that on the list. And one I didn't mention was the director of internal audit. So we're looking, we've extended, not an official audit.
Don't give us a name until they're signed.
Yeah. So that's let me finish. So once we have that one nailed down, we'll be able to then present that one to the board as well. So again, we
Did we get job descriptions on all these people? Did the board get a copy of it
yes, ma'am.
on all of them?
That's not a problem. Yes, ma'am.
No, I asked you, did we? If we did, I want to.
Yes, ma'am. So we have job description. Yes, that's a requirement. That you have job description.
No, I mean, I'm saying I might have missed.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm not aware that they went out, but I can provide those to you to distribute
Well,
accordingly.
I'd like to have a copy. Other people may not, but I'd like to have a copy.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you know who the enrollment person is?
The contract is not signed.
Okay. And then housing?
We're not complete.
What about the,
CIO?
one more position, isn't it?
Madam Chair, we have, again, customer relations, compliance and risk, enrollment management, housing and residential life,
Yeah,
COO.
compliance and risk. Did you say Cindy Howe is a person on there?
Yes, ma'am. She did accept the position.
Oh, wonderful. That's a good hire. Wonderful. Okay.
And we're still looking for COO.
Yes, I will refer to Attorney Pendleton.
Yes, so,
Hey, the CFO, you better be watching where you listen to what people saying, Alan.
Absolutely. I don't miss nothing.
yes, so we're in the process now. We had several folks. We had a normal posting, an application process. We also use an executive search firm to assist. That yielded approximately 32 applications, and the search committee then met, took that down to suggested on 6, did Zoom-based interviews, and then now we're looking at the 4 individuals coming to campus, the opportunity to meet with board members as well as other folks on campus.
Is there a board member on the search committee?
On the search committee, well,
On the CEO search committee, is there a board member on here?
on the COO, no, Dr. Glover, no, we don't have an actual board member on that. But the board is, so the search committee's work's really completed. So now, as we move to the 4, those 4 will be interviewed by board members, and board members as they wish, as well as then members of the administration.
Okay.
So the board will have input and recommendation.
Yep.
Any other questions on
Well,
that?
board have input and recommendation, but whose vote counts? The search committee, I mean, the members that's on the search committee, right?
No,
Normally
at-
how it is.
well, no, at
They
this,
completed, right?
right, at this stage now, it's in the, shall we say, the hiring authorities' hands, which is ultimately is the president. And she would then get with the input from the folks that will meet with the candidates when they come to campus. So that would be board members, members of administration. The president will then solicit input on that in making a final decision.
Okay, so a committee is going to interview those 4 people.
No,
Then I don't know if we're doing it different. We used to, and then we would rank those 4 people and we give that to the president.
That's already happened.
But the final decision is the president.
yeah, so the
Okay.
committee, yeah, so it's now in the hands of the president. The committee has already advanced those folks to the president.
Oh, okay, the 4 have already been advanced to the president.
Exactly.
Okay,
Can you provide us materials,
those names?
CVs and stuff? For those 4 candidates are coming.
All right. Any other questions on that piece? All right, is there any other business?
Well, I got a question. I'm trying to make sure we keep these processes as normal and to the within policy as we've always done them. So I guess I'm saying that it's closed on those 4, I guess, that he's talking about, and those 4 have been submitted to the president. Of course, then the president will ultimately select one of those 4, if I understand it correctly. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Before we adjourn, let me let me go over a list of action items. So job descriptions to be provided to the board. The master plan to be provided to the board with respect to the housing piece in particular. We need to develop a very clear bed assignment process. We need a communications plan that's going to give the board some sense of what is being said, to whom is being said, when is being said, and by whom is being said. Regular updates on enrollment numbers to the board. Monthly, I believe is what we said. So those are the things that I have.
Or sooner, since we're coming down to the real decision dates. August is coming up. Could we do every 2 weeks instead of monthly? That might be better for that.
We also mentioned the portal, so I'm not sure what the capability.
Yeah, if it was a dashboard that was live,
Yeah.
we can click out, that would be nice. And that could be a daily. Okay, that would be good.
Is that hard, difficult?
I think the list is all inclusive, but I would suggest that somebody needs to put some dates to them. I mean, I know that you can't get the one you're submitting to the building commission till it gets to that time, but other than that, I think you should have some dates. Otherwise, you're open-ended. You can't hold anybody responsible for open-ended data reports, except for the one that comes to the board monthly.
Tim, do we have an easy dashboard tool?
Such as,
Creating an easy dashboard,
you mean for like a website?
internal?
We can make one. I mean, we can give you a format to use, so you can just plug and play.
Yeah, because that's what we're talking about for housing and admissions.
So my thinking in terms of what's coming to the board, since we have a board meeting coming up in June, we have one by the board meeting.
What other piece? The CVs and application letters for the board.
The job descriptions.
Yeah. And job description. Yeah.
All right.
It's a lot.
All hearts and minds clear? All right, if there's no business, I move the committee adjourn. Any discussion? If they're present, please call the roll.
All right, trustee Pinnick,
Aye.
trustee Johnson. Trustee McKenzie. Not rolled off.
Motion approved, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.